Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by Projections, North America's leading provider of employee communication resources, including video, websites, e-learning, social media, and virtual events to help you connect with your team. For more information, you can visit us online at projectionsinc.com. I am Jennifer Oraqua, COO of Projections, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. So remember recess, an oasis in the middle of our school days, 10 to 20 minutes of glorious, unstructured playtime, time that we largely left behind as we matured in favor of more serious and sensible pursuits. Why on earth do we eliminate play? Because it turns out that play has a genuine positive impact on our minds and on our well-being, even into adulthood. So joining us today to remind us about the importance of play is Ware, the founder of Breakthrough Play, an organization designed to help professionals use the power of play to become more creative, more confident, and to develop deeper relationships with their teams and their clients. Gary, we're so excited to have you today on Project HR.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So let's dive right into this. What do you mean when you say play?
Well, play is doing something that brings you joy for the sake of doing it.
Okay, that makes sense. So my understanding, though, is that, say, going to the gym or working out, going out for a run, those don't really count as play.
Not necessarily. It's one of those things where as adults, we get very serious. And if you think about going to the gym, not a lot of us actually like going to the gym. Don't get me wrong. The results are great,
Yep.
but it's not enjoyable. There is an amazing book by Dr. Stuart Brown. And Dr. Stuart Brown, in this book called Play, he talks about these different archetypes. And for everyone, play is going to vary. And those archetypes are the Joker. And for the person who identifies as the Joker, your form of play is that you like practical jokes. You like causing mischief. Mm-hmm. There's also the Explorer. And someone who sees that as a form of play, they like to explore new places to go, new places to gather. Mm-hmm. Now, where most play lies in is what Dr. Stuart Brown calls the competitor. And the competitor is someone that they love specific rules and they like to play to win. You know, that's where we get a lot of our team sports. There is also the director. Their form of play is they like to organize, they like to plan, they like to orchestrate events.
Okay.
And then we have the storyteller, and their form of play is they like to tell stories. They like to get lost in fantasy. Things like improv theater falls into that. Mm-hmm. And then we have the collector. They play by gathering interesting things, whether they're collecting baseball cards or maybe they are collecting stamps on their passport. All of that is play. And then we have the artist and the creator. And for the artist and creator, for them, they like to make things, but it's not necessarily to sell or display it, but just the fact that they're using their hands and they're making something, it's play. And okay. I like to just sort of highlight all of these different archetypes go back to what I said in the beginning. They are doing something, and the act of doing it is bringing them joy rather than the outcome.
Mm-hmm. So it's all about the journey. So we talked a little bit about recess being a common experience growing up, which means that, as a society, we recognize the importance of play to kids on an institutional level. So how is play beneficial to children? And then we'll get into how it's beneficial for us as adults.
Well, up into age 12, 13, everything that kids do is through play. I personally have a 4-year-old son. His name is Garrett, and he is always engaging in some sort of game, and he's learning through that. That is, how his brain is shaping. That is how he's learning boundaries. That is how he's connecting with myself, my wife, and his playmates. And there's a lot of studies that show that if you look at how kids play with certain things, you're going to start to understand more about their personality. That's why we give kids toy brooms and toy kitchens so that they can play around with these things. But in reality, they are simulating what it's like to clean up. And to be honest, that has been like the best thing that me and my wife gave my son is when we gave him that toy broom set, he again was like, oh, let me help, let me sweep. And again, it was a game. It was fun for him, but he is learning hand-eye coordination. He's learning how to use fine and gross motor skills.
Plus, he's taking care of the chores at home, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. So, as we age, of course, we don't make as much time for play. You're saying, when you're a kid, all your time is play. So, that unstructured play, is this something that we put on ourselves? We take this away from ourselves, or is it a societal thing?
I believe it's society because as humans, we are what scientists call neotenous creatures. What that means is that we retain our juvenile features even through adulthood. So if you look at animals all across different species, they play, and play is a very vulnerable experience. However, bears in the wild, they only do what is necessary to survive, but they still see the value in that because they see what it brings to them, as in it allows them to de-stress, it allows them to connect. But us adults, because play is only seen through very finite lens, as in, oh, it's something that kids do, or it's goofing off.
Mm-hmm.
As we get older, we don't see the priority. And as a
Right.
result, we don't take advantage of it.
Because it doesn't appear productive. So I want to go back a minute to the different personalities that you mentioned just a few minutes ago. Joker, explorer, director. Does everybody fit into one of those, or do we tend to move between them as we age? How does that work?
I feel like we have a dominant one or two that we explored a lot as we got older. And I'll mention here in a bit, following your compass of joy, especially for people that want to bring play back into their life. But one of the cool things about this is that it's, not permanent. You can try a few on and you can see how does that enhance your experience. For me personally, I gravitate towards the Joker and a storyteller. You asked my mom and she said, ever since you can walk and talk, you were always telling stories and playing jokes on people.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk about the benefits of play, specifically for adults. Do the benefits that we've discussed, do they change as we grow, or do they diminish in any way?
They actually, and see, this is one of the things about play. And I like to say with play, it's more than just the, the act of playing. It's the things that it brings. And one of the cool things about play is that it can help teams connect on a deeper level. It can reduce stress. It can help us be more productive. It can help us generate ideas when done appropriately. It can help you seem more attractive. It can help you with leadership. All of that is, in my opinion, something that is important. Also, and especially in the time that we're in now, it helps you see the potential positive outcomes. It helps you be more resilient. However, we deprioritize play.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Gary, tell me a little bit about, kind of make the business case for me on why we should focus on play. Why should a company or an employer spend time and energy? What are the benefits of it?
There was a Forbes article that came out recently that was talking about the future work and how it will demand very specific soft skills. That is the ability to understand ambiguity, how to be curious, how to have openness, empathy, resiliency. They also talked about optimism and imagination and building rapport and developing strong relationships. If you think about any game that you have played, by the sure act of engaging in that game, you are actually building those skills that are necessary for teams to jump into the next age of work. Case in point, say that you are just playing with your team and it seems like it's an innocent game, but the fact that there is a lot of uncertainty of what's going to happen is requiring you to think on your feet. Now you're having to trust your teammates. And when you were playing, it's all simulation. At the top of the show, I talked about my son and how we gave him a toy broom and he's practicing the art of sweeping, but actually he doesn't realize that he's actually growing a skill. That same growing of your brain still happens in adulthood. Researcher Karen Previs said that to develop a synapse in the brain, it normally takes upwards of 400 to 420 repetitions. However, if you engage play, you can shortcut that to 20.
Interesting.
So if a company wants something to accelerate growth, why not incorporate play?
Yeah, for sure. All right, super interesting. So, Gary, we're going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, we're going to address how you can incorporate play into your workspaces. So stay with us.
Are you working to build an employee relations dream team? I've got an in-depth guide that provides the same roadmap used by employers of choice across the country. It reveals the 3 functional areas you must address before you begin building your dream team, gives you detailed job descriptions, and key performance indicators that will make your team a trusted part of top management. Get inspired and meet the needs of your company with this masterful guide to building your employee relations dream team. Download it at unionproof.com/build an employee relations dream team.
And we're back with Gary Ware, founder of Breakthrough Play. And Gary, our audience is made up of the best of human resources. We want to help employees live their best life. We want to create positive working environments to enhance engagement and productivity and all the things that make for a great work culture. So if we want our employees to incorporate more play into their working lives, how do we encourage that? How do we foster that in our workplaces?
It's all about making it a priority. It's all about purposeful play. So having an outcome and bringing playful elements to achieve that outcome. That is the core, because at organizations, you only have so many hours, and last thing you want to do is add another thing on your plate. However, once you start to schedule it and make it a priority, you will start to see the benefits of that. In a organization, what is the outcome that you're looking to have? And how can you bring playful moments into that so that you can reap all the benefits? So I'll give you a few examples. As of the recording, we are doing a lot of virtual meetings. We're working from home. We have teams that are separated all across the globe. Typical meetings are, they go like this. We all log into Zoom or whatever platform, and we want to get down to business. So we jump into it. And as a result, people are experiencing Zoom fatigue. They're not as engaged as they were. And one way that you can bring the spirit of play into it is have some bit of connection at the top. What I've been advising leaders to do is, instead of filling your meeting with content, prioritize connection as a way to make sure that everyone is engaged. And as a result, they're going to retain more. And that can look like, as simple on the smallest level, is, let's go around and let's play a game called Unfortunately, Fortunately. And basically, say one thing that is unfortunate that maybe happened in the last 24, 48, whatever hours, and something that is fortunate. Again, so now we're being vulnerable, we're sharing, and it's a bit of gratitude, but being realistic. That is a simple thing that allows people to be seen and heard. And as a result, now we know where people are coming from. And then we can sort of relax in and jump into the meeting.
I love that. And I love how it also kind of frames where everybody's head is at before they go into it, so that we can relate to each other on that level as well. That's really smart. So is this something that companies need to make room for on a daily basis? I mean, do we need to set up corporate version of recess, or is this more of a workshop every now and then kind of an initiative?
Well, I'd like to say this: if you are looking to get in shape just by seeing a trainer once, that's not necessarily going to do it for you.
True.
It's all about small incremental actions that are going to make those habits. So I like to say, at the end of the day, what are going to be those key inflection points, and how can we add play to that? For example, we all know that after lunch, we start to get a little fatigued. What typically happens is that, we like, oh, well, let's go get some coffee, or the worst case scenario, let me just power through. It's only another 4 hours. But the research shows that the longer that you go without breaks, the more likely that you will make mistakes. And so imagine if you incorporated, like you said, those recess moments where you can take the time to power up. We went to recess as a kid, and the interesting thing about recess is that it was structured perfectly. Right when the kids' attention was starting to wane, they were told to go outside and play. And then they came back completely focused, drilled into their work, able to engage, and the teacher can continue. But as adults, we forgot about that, and we feel like we need to be chained to our desk, even though the law says we should take breaks. But, in a lot of organizations where that's not policed, we tend to just sit at our desk and, just keep working.
Keep going. Yep. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. How much does something like this cost? How much does a program like this cost to implement?
I first want to say, what is the cost of not doing it? Right now it could be higher, but last time I checked, the cost of replacing an employee is upwards of double their salary.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't institute something like this, your risk is that your intelligent employees are going to eventually get fed up and they're going to leave. Or
Mm-hmm.
worse yet, they're going to get burnt out. And how much is that going to cost in increased medical expenses for the individual and for the company as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
So taking that into consideration, here's like a low, medium, high. On a low end, it doesn't cost anything to say, you know what, at the top of our meetings, we're going to be intentional and institute some sort of connection activity for the sheer purpose of making sure that everyone feels heard, belongs, so that they can be more engaged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On the higher end, I've seen things like Johnson & Johnson had a wellness program where they brought in on the monthly, they brought in a consultant to facilitate some of these wellness playful activities.
Mm-hmm.
The ROI that they found, it was 16-1.
Hmm.
And that is in regards to reducing turnover, employee satisfaction. All of those increased when they invested in their team.
So we've made the business case for it. We can see where, an employer's objections might be. But let's talk about the employee side of it. In a world where employees often, they resist using vacation days to maintain their reputation, how hard a sell is it to convince employees that, yes, having fun, playing is allowed and encouraged? How is this, how do we convey this? How do we get this mindset and get our heads wrapped around this?
You bring up a really good point. We're, especially here in the Americas, it's almost seen as a badge of honor to, to have burnout.
Yeah.
I remember, back when we can gather in person, people touting, I work so many hours. Oh my gosh.
Right.
I am so tired.
So busy.
And I'm so busy. I am so busy. I am so busy.
Right.
Seems like it's the thing that's echoed over and over again.
Sure.
And it is a challenge. This is the thing, because we are wired to play. Once we start getting to a place where, we're back to normal and we're not in that fight, flight, or freeze constantly, we will start to gravitate towards that. It has to be modeled from the top down, because, employees are only going to do what they see other people do. The way that we're wired is that if we're stressed, we are activating our amygdala, our sort of lizard brain, and it takes our prefrontal cortex offline and plays the last thing that we want to think about. And so what we need to do, and this is a sort of cue/hint for leaders, is what can you do to reduce stress so that people can start to breathe, so that they can start to, then, all right, now that I'm not as stressed, all right, now I'm going to be in the right mindset to consider some of this playful stuff.
And certainly reducing stress obviously increases productivity, where we think if we just work all the time, we'll be more, more productive. But actually, if we take that time away, we actually become more productive. So thinking about that, how can companies encourage employees to make time for play and that sort of unstructured joy when they're off the clock?
This is one of the things where I mentioned the compass of joy. I like to give people a little challenge and experiment, because I feel like when you say experiment, it doesn't seem so finite. And when I'm doing workshops, I like to invite everyone, think of something that you did when you were younger, preferably like under 13, that brought you joy, that, you just did it for the sake of doing it. What was that? And just the fact of like thinking about that, starts to elicit those happy chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. Just thinking about that, because it's the nostalgia fact. And then, I have people write down a few things. And then I like to say, how can you incorporate that into your life now? Now, that may require a little bit of creativity, but what could that look like? And then schedule 5 to 10 minutes and do it and see how it feels. If most likely you're going to enjoy it and you're going to want to do it more. That's why I say just a small amount of time, because what's going through everyone's minds is a few things. One, I don't have a lot of time. And so something about 5 or 10 minutes seems doable. We probably spend more than 5 or 10 minutes scrolling through social media. So I feel like this is a good alternative. You can substitute social media scrolling for something, that brings you joy. 2, the challenge that people see, because they see play as something that is a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
They're scared that they're going to get lost in it, and then they're going to get behind in work or whatnot. So let's just be intelligent. Let's time box it. But the cool
Mm-hmm.
thing about doing that is that you're going to, when you're done, you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, that actually felt pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to tell people, reflect on how it made you feel, and, would you want to engage in this? And why I want people to be intentional is
Mm-hmm.
that we have a bias towards negativity.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We will remember something negative that happened without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Someone cut us off on the freeway. We, we had a bad experience at a restaurant. That, that lingers. But for some reason, the happiness, because we're not wired for that, we're wired for like sort of negativity,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
keeps us alive. But the happiness things sometimes can slip through the cracks. So I want us to be intentional to, after we finish, say, scan our bodies. How are you feeling? Are you feeling less stressed? What
Mm-hmm.
was that like? Did time fly?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get through, get in that state of flow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's, the start.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and going back to this, kind of encouraging employees to do that on their own. Like I can relate a personal story. When I was 13, you're saying, what did you enjoy doing? I was really into miniatures, and I loved working with tiny things and the detail that went into that and the time. And as I got older, I just kind of outgrew it. And so recently I said, I'm going to get back into this. I'm going to spend some time playing and doing that for myself. And I bought the supplies and I bought the dollhouse, and there it sits in the corner of the dining room. So what are some practical ways that we can kind of focus on that and get ourselves into that zone?
It's just like if we want to start any new routine, we have to set ourselves up for success. So if you wanted to, start a new diet routine or a new exercise routine, you would, one, set aside time for it. You would, make sure that you have all the supplies. I like to say, and I got this from a researcher, Sean Acor. He wrote an amazing book, The Happiness Advantage, Before
Hmm.
Happiness, and a few other, books on positive psychology. And he talks about reducing activation energy. We
Hmm.
don't want to do things that are going to seem like it's going to take a long time or is going to be a daunting thing.
Hmm.
In the moment, you were excited about exploring miniatures again.
Hmm.
But, maybe to your brain, the thought of like, oh, you know what, I got to take this out. I got to do this and this. It's
Yeah.
just a lot.
Right.
So, as an intelligent person, yeah, why do that when you can easily do something where it's more habitual?
Hmm.
Our phones are right there, and
Right.
without even thinking, and we blink and we're like, oh wow, I have social media out, or I have this out, I have email out. I'm checking email again. And so we have to set ourselves up for success. And the first thing is scheduling time, creating space for that to happen. And that's why I say, start with 5 or 10 minutes. Now, in the
Hmm.
case of something like miniatures, like
Hmm.
I get it, like just getting set up may take 5 or 10 minutes
Hmm.
to do
Yeah.
that. And
Right.
so in that case, what can you do to set up ahead of time so you can jump into it
Hmm.
and then say, all right, that's enough.
Hmm.
And I'm going to set this down, because it's like I said about play. Play is all about the experience of being in it. And I know as adults, we're all about, we need to complete things and X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
just imagine what will happen if we just allowed ourselves to be.
Yes. I love that. All right, Gary, we're going to take some time out for another quick break, and we'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Oraqua, and our guest today is Gary Ware, founder of Breakthrough Play. And we're back. So, Gary, I feel like a lot of us are play starved right now. Why do you think play is more important now than it has been before?
Oh, I love the fact that you use play starved, because that's an actual thing. Dr. Stuart Brown talks about play deprivation.
Hmm.
And when you go through play deprivation, you actually experience anxiety, you experience mood swings. And if you think about the environment that we've had over the last 12 months with the global pandemic and all of the other economic and social things that are going on in the world, we're experiencing a lot of stress. We are not wired to have that much cortisol pumping through our bodies, to be
Hmm.
in the fight, flight, or freeze all the time. It serves a purpose, as in something is attacking us or we're experiencing something in the moment, and that cortisol and adrenaline is pumping through our body to help us tackle it right then and there. And
Hmm.
then we go through it, but yet we are going through it over and over again, and it's depleting our resources.
Hmm.
And play, as paradoxical as it is that anecdote.
Excellent. So, Gary, let's talk about your company, Breakthrough Play. You guys help organizations discover the power of play for themselves. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
I like to say, we're in the business of creating breakthrough players. Because if you think about sports, those breakthrough players are the ones that are making the game-winning plays. They're making the passes. They're doing all of those things. And my tool of doing that is through purposeful play and applied improvisation.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Yes. So I'm glad you asked. Thank you. There are so many of these competencies that are needed to be successful in business, like the ability to be creative, be innovative, to think on your feet, to communicate, to work together, in a team environment. Well, what I do is through various workshops, I will create a curriculum of games that allows participants to experience what it's like in a low stakes environment with your team so that you can fail at it and make mistakes, and better yet, experience what it's like to do it the right way so that when the stakes are higher, you're more likely to do that behavior.
All right. So fascinating. How can our listeners get in touch with you and learn more?
If something struck a chord with you, you can always go to my website, breakthroughplay.com, where you can learn all about the various offerings that I have and see some videos on how you and your team can bring the power of play into your work environment.
Oh, very nice. All right. So I want to let our listeners know that links to Breakthrough Play's website will be included in the episode companion guide. So listeners, be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. Right now, though, Gary, it is time for our lightning round questions. And these are questions we ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So our first question is always a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about the power of play. So Gary, in your opinion, which of these classic recess games is more fun, dodgeball or hide and go seek?
I am all about hide and go seek.
Excellent. So what is the best book that you've read recently?
It's a book titled Put Happiness to Work. It's by someone that I know personally. His name is Eric Kopinski, and he actually worked with Sean Acor facilitating happiness and positive psychology in the workplace. And he has some amazing actionable tips that companies can deploy to help their employees be more happier.
Oh, okay. Nice. So what's your favorite thing about helping people connect with play?
Well, it's that amazing feeling of just looking at a team for a short period of time. They're not thinking about their to-do list. They're not thinking about anything that is going on. They're completely present and they're completely engaged in each other's company. And the fact that they have these amazing aha moments through play, it just gives me goosebumps just thinking about the possibilities.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice that I've ever been given is by Dr. Emily Anhart. She's a clinical psychologist, and she has an amazing company that is all about mental fitness. It's called COA. And that advice is, it is not possible to prepare right now in the present what's going to happen in the future. You just have to leave that and trust that your future self is going to take care of it the best way that they can. And just be present in the moment, because your past version of yourself knew that the version of you now was going to take care of what you have going on right now.
I love that. That makes perfect sense within the context of play. So my last question is, who or what inspires you?
Right now, it's my 4-year-old son, Garrett.
Sure.
His creative brain is amazing. And I feel like I'm biased because he's my son.
Sure.
But I look at the things that he does on a day-to-day basis. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. But he gets angry, he's excited, he's completely present. But then, if he gets angry, he's angry for a moment. He doesn't hold a grudge. Right. And then he just lets it go.
Yeah.
And he moves on. And the things that he thinks of, I would never have thought of that. And I sometimes want to just say, stay golden, little guy.
I love it. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR, Gary.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Sure. And thanks to our listeners. Once again, this is your reminder to grab the companion guide for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. If you'd like to be on Project HR or you know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. On Twitter and Facebook, you can find us at Projections, and on LinkedIn at Projections Inc. And last but certainly not least, to make sure you never miss an episode of Project HR, I hope you subscribe to the podcast. Drop us a line, leave us a review, or simply give us a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's it from me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.